Hi, welcome back to Daydreams of Quilts on YouTube. Today I have a free tutorial for you on making polypropylene grocery bags. And this is an old one of mine that is about 10 years old and it's starting to disintegrate on the inside. So lucky for me, I have a whole bunch of polypropylene left over from the big mask rush of 2020. So I need new grocery bags and I have the fabric to make them. So we're gonna make grocery bags today. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to need to cut 2 panels that are 12 inches wide by 16 inches high. You could make this with quilter's cotton, but it would probably be getting quite expensive. If you can get your hands on polypropylene, it'll be a lot cheaper, and I think there's quite a few quilt shops that are trying to get rid of this stuff. I will put a link to where I got this from in the description below. Okay, then we need to cut a gusset for the bag, which is 8.5 inches wide by 38 inches tall, but I cut it 40, so I have a little bit left to trim off just in case I come up a little short. And then 2 handles. The handles are cut 6 inches wide by 42 inches long. And then I'm using this vintage bias tape binding. So that's what I'm going to use to bind my grocery bags. So the first thing we're going to do is draw a line along our handle strips at the halfway point, which is 3 inches. So we're just going to draw a line all the way down the strip, and then we're going to fold to that center line on both sides, and then fold it all together to make our handle. And then we're going to sew 1/8 of an inch from each side, 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch. It's just a grocery bag, so it doesn't have to be perfect. To make our handles, I would use caution with an iron with this. I would have it on synthetic setting or low setting because this might melt. But I'm going to go press these at the iron and we'll see what happens. Okay, so I've pressed them with the iron at just below the wool setting and not holding the iron for too long, and that worked out fine. And then I've stitched down either side. So now we're ready to put the handles onto the bag panels. So I've got my ruler set at about 1 1/4 inch just to allow for seam allowance. And so I'm just going to pin this handle at 1 1/4 inches. And I'm going to leave 1 1/4 inch at the top unsewn so that I can hem the whole bag at the end. So I'll just put a pin there to remind myself not to sew past that. So I'm going to sew up here across the top and down the bottom on both sides. Now just make sure your handle's not twisted as you're bringing down the second side. I'm just going to line it up with 1 1/4 inches on the mat here. So then I'm going to do the same on this side. I'm going to sew up, across, and down, and repeat for the second panel and the second handle. Okay, so I've got the handle sewn on now, and the next step is to put the gusset onto the bag. You can find the center of the gusset by folding it in half and pressing with your fingers, and then find the center of your panel, and then put those 2 centers together. And this way you can just make sure that you have everything even. So put a clip there. Now we're going to clip all the way to the corner. And we're going to sew this bottom edge first, but we're going to stop 1/4 inch from the edge. And we're sewing with a 1/4 inch seam. And that's just so we can turn on that corner without getting our fabric all bunched up. So I'm going to sew with the right sides together, we're going to be covering the seam with this bias tape, or you don't have to use the bias tape if you don't want, but I think it will strengthen the bag and give it a bit of structure and strengthen the seams. So I'm going to go sew this, and then I'll come back and pin the sides. Okay, so I left that little 1/4 inch there just to make it easier to turn. I'm just going to sort of tuck the fabric like this in a bit of a Y shape, and go back up the other side, and I'll do the same for the other side of the panel. So we'll just clip up, and this time I'm just going to sew all the way up to the top. Okay, so there's one panel with the gusset on. So now I'm going to attach the second panel, and then we're going to turn these down, and I might have to take some of my seams out here just to get the top even with the gusset. So I'm going to take my seam ripper and take a couple seams out. So maybe leave 2 inches at the top for your handle to be unstitched. Okay, so I found the center of the gusset again and put a clip there to mark it, and the same with the panel, the second panel. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to clip these together at the center, and so to just the 1/4 inch from the end of each corner, and stop sewing at the 1/4 inch mark, and then I'll pin the sides and go up the sides. Okay, so I've got all of these seams done, and I've just popped my seams. So yeah, we need to leave 2 inches unstitched at the top of this panel, and then we're just going to fold these panel edges down, and we're just going to stitch right across the handles right here, and the whole bag will be even at the top with the gusset. Okay, so at this point we've got everything sewn together, and we're going to turn it right side out. And if you want to say, okay, that's it, this bag is done at this point, you can do that. I'm just going to do the bias trim by folding all of my seams together, just rolling that seam out, and then I'm going to put this over top of the seam. I'm going to do this whole gusset seam, so I'll start on one corner, and I'll put this all the way around to the other corner. Just open it up like this, put it over your seam, and then I'm just going to stitch right along the edge here. Okay, so I've got it stitched all around the seams, the bias tape. Now I'm going to stitch it all around the top of the bag, or if you want, you could cut your gusset about 4 inches longer, and then you would be able to hem the whole top of the bag. But my gusset is just hitting the top of the front panels. The front panels were turned down and stitched to the handles. So now I'm just going to go around the whole top with the bias binding, and then I'm going to just stitch right under it across my handles just to get them a little bit strengthened. So there we go. And this is a close-up here. Okay, so we're basically done. Now all that I'm going to do is take some of the leftover bias tape and put a couple of loops in the center on each side, just like this, so that we can hook it onto the bag holders at the store. And also I'm going to put a couple of little loop tabs in the center on each side of the gusset right here, so that, you know how they have those little bars you can slide the bags onto? We're going to put that onto here just to make our lives easier when we're packing our groceries. Okay, so I've cut the loops 3.5 inches for the ones that are going to go on the sides on the gusset, and 6 inches for the ones that are going to go between the handles. Okay, so here they are. I've just sewn over them a couple times back and forth for these two that are centered between the handles. And to get the center, I just lined up the handles and then folded it in half. And then for the side ones, I just sort of created a loop. I went back and forth 3 times, and then I went vertical back and forth. So hopefully that's gonna hold up. Now I have this slightly mangled piece of plastic from the old grocery bag. I'm just gonna pop that in the bottom to make the bottom of the bag a little bit sturdier. So there we go. If you don't have a little piece of plastic left over from an old grocery bag, you could use foam core or corrugated plastic. Sometimes after an event, people are discarding their signage from a big event, and sometimes that signage is made out of corrugated plastic. So you could use that for the base of your bag. But whether you're using a handmade grocery bag or a $1 bag that you got at the store or a free bag, I just want to say thank you for using reusable grocery bags and helping cut down on the plastic waste. So thanks for sewing along with me, and we'll see you next time.